My name is Penny and welcome to Coppertree Acres. If this is your first time here, we are a 4-acre small pecan farm located in southeast Arizona. We grow organic vegetables, have free-range chickens for eggs, and 3 small farm dogs. And today is a very, very special day for us. We have a guest visitor coming to the farm. He is someone we truly admire, and it is a great privilege to have him out today. He is someone who has been a wealth of knowledge in the local gardening arena out here in Arizona. He is the creator of an amazing organic fertilizer. We have used this fertilizer for 5 years now, going on 6 actually. So exclusive fertilizer we use here on the farm for the trees, for the flowers and the flowers to come, and our garden. Stay tuned, this is going to be a good time.
Hello everybody, this is Tony Sara with Earth's Original Organics Fertilizer. We're here today at Coppertree Acres Farm. Great to be down here, was really appreciative of the invite from Penny. A little bit about me. I've been in the nursery and landscape industry here in Arizona for over 40 years. Got a degree in horticulture from the U of A 30 years ago, and am a member of the International Society of Arboriculture and was the co-developer of a national organic potting soil. And we're here today to look at beautiful pecan trees, the vegetable garden, some of the fruit trees, talk about fertilizing, what to do. They are now using exclusively here Earth's Original Organics Fertilizer, which I was the developer of. It is a patented organic fertilizer derived from bat guano, kelp meal, neem seed meal, molasses powder, magnesium sulfate, volcanic ash, and mycorrhizae, and literally works on everything from avocados to zinnias and everything in between. So let's go ahead and take a look around the farm here now and see what we've got. We even have set up some of the fertilizer over here so you can know what to look for. You can check out earthsoriginalorganics.com to order directly or see where you can purchase it locally. If you don't see it in your area, send us a message and we'll work on getting it registered in your area. So we've got the original formula, Tony's Magic Mix, which was named by gardeners that I used for testing it originally. We went with Tony's Magic Mix. This is designed for everyday regular use for overall health and growth of all of your plants, be they roses, be they pecan trees, be they little zinnias. And then we have Tony's Magic Flour. Same ingredients, played around with them a little bit to get the slightly different formula. This is designed originally to help promote flowering of plants. It is also great to use at planting. Mix some down in the soil and it's going to help promote root growth on your new plants without pushing a lot of top growth. It's also great to apply this in the fall for your spring flowering fruit trees, as they will then take this up and store it so that it's there for use when they need it come spring. If you try and apply it in the spring when the trees are about to flower, it may not necessarily break down rapidly enough for it to be there for use for the trees to reach their full potential in flowering. So this is what we've got going here. Check your region. If you're in the desert Southwest like we are here, organic fertilizers may be used monthly, especially in the vegetable garden and flower garden. Something like pecan trees may only need it 3 to 5 times a year. Has everything in here, so you don't need to use anything else. You can apply it dry and water it in, or you can do what they've done here at Coppertree Acres, and it makes a great fertilizer tea. So come on back, let's take a look at what we have here. So here we've got a 250-gallon tote for water to put it in. You can go ahead and use different methods. You can use a sock, you can use pantyhose, you can use a burlap bag. They make what they call fertilizer tea bags. You can order those online. You're going to use on something like this here, you're going to use 10 to 15 pounds of fertilizer. Wrap it up in the bag, tie it on with a knot, drop it down in here, and we can see what they've done here. And we have it in socks here. And you can soak these in here. Ideally, you will want to put an aerator pump and you can run it for 24 hours. If you do not have the electric out there to be able to do that, You can leave this for 3 days up to 5 days, and you will want to stir it as regularly as possible. Here, gone ahead and taken a mop head and attached it to a long broom handle to make it easy to get down in here and just stir it. And if you can do this as many times a day as possible, then you're going to be all set. After a few days, you'll be all set and ready for use. We'll re-ring here on the side. Depending upon your hookup, so you've got a valve here, you could hook it straight up to a gardening hose. If you do have electric, you get a pump, drop it down in here for your aerator pump, and then hook a garden hose up to it. Go around, water your plants directly with it. Doing it as a tea versus dry. Teas you do want to apply every 2 to 5 weeks, depending upon your location. How hot it is will determine how much water you put on it. Teas tend to leach through the ground a little bit faster, so they do need to be applied more frequently, but they give you much quicker responses versus doing it dry. Getting ready to go and look at all the different trees that are here on the property. Pecans, quince, apple, apricot, pomegranates, the vegetable garden, even the little seedling room. And we're going to diagnose any issues that we may see on all the individual plants so that we can try and come up with a game plan on what to do to revitalize this property where they've been at now for about a year, and what you might be able to do with your own house if you see any of these similar issues going on at your place.
So these are in-ground beds, and I was just curious on if you should do anything different when establishing in-ground beds as opposed to, say, something that's a raised garden bed.
No, overall you're gonna treat them the same. So a raised garden bed to me is just a built-up in-ground bed. So most organic fertilizers in general are a pound per 10 to 20 square feet of area. So again, they've already figured out that if it's a cup, it's 3 cups, it's 5 cups, that's basically a pound. So if that's what they're recommending for 10 or 20 square feet of area. Again, pre-planting, most organic fertilizers, unless it says otherwise, you can take anything that's designed more for promoting flowering and mix it in as a pre-plant, because that's also going to encourage root growth. This is going to be with organics, not a synthetic chemical. So with organics, you can go ahead and do that. Synthetic chemical, you might have to wait a month or 2 after applying it before you can even plant anything. Then again, monthly, apply the growth formula, the Tony's Magic Mix versus the Tony's Magic Flowers mixed in at planting. When you're dealing with organics, they are expensive. The formula that I had developed is very expensive. It's top shelf because bat guano is still considered the gold standard out there, so it is one of the most expensive fertilizers. Even just buying it by itself, you can be $10 a pound just for bat guano, give or take, depending upon your location, for what it takes for shipping to get it there. If you want to stretch it out, this is where you can go back to fertilizer tea. So apply it once good as a dry to give things a good chance to get going. What they found with organics, plants generally may not know the difference between an organic and a synthetic. They take up the nutrients in a chemical form. Organics are probiotics for our gut. They promote the beneficial microbiome of the soil, the beneficial bacteria, the beneficial fungi. Getting a good colony of those actively growing in the soil is what promotes better, healthier, more productive plants in your garden. So that's the whole idea. So getting it dry at least once, then you're going to get that beneficial fungi and bacteria going in your soil. Then to help stretch the dollar out, you can apply 2 to 5 pounds in a 50-gallon drum and use that as a fertilizer tea, and come back in and do that once or twice a month. You'll get a little quicker results, but it will stretch your dollar out farther, and then reapply the granular again at the end of the season. If you can afford it mid-season, everything's getting expensive. If this is what it takes to help stretch out the dollar, you're going to do it, and you're still going to have a good harvest. Yeah, these have a beautiful Beautiful color on them. Good stem already, nice and strong.
Yeah, they've been doing great. I was going to get them in the ground soon. I just wasn't sure with the way that our frost thing has been, and it's getting warmer. But next week's supposed to cool down just a little.
Well, and again, everybody just looks at the daytime temperature. They forget that
I know.
they're tucked in snug as a bug in their bed at night, and what counts are the nighttime temperature, not the daytime. Especially when you're taking tomatoes or peppers outside. Now, taking greens, those are fine. If they've gotten hardied off some and it's a mild frost, parsley, the lettuce,
right?
Especially anything in the cabbage family, any of your basilicas,
right?
They're going to be fine.
I've been putting some Tony's of the flour in the watering can, for these guys, so that I don't go too crazy. I didn't want too much nitrogen for the foliage so much. I wanted to promote that fruiting, so I thought maybe I would try that, and it's been doing fantastic.
These are nice, stacking, good distance with the foliage.
Super happy with those 4-inch blocks I made myself.
Yeah, these are
funny
neat
looking. But these 2-inch, these are all needing potted up. I've just been so busy I haven't gotten to them, but those are next on my list. And then I'll get them so that way that air pruning's going on with those roots, put them in those 4-inch blocks.
Yeah, these are nice.
This is one of the baby trees I put in. It's a pink lady. And I haven't done it. I don't know if there's any pruning that's needed in something small like this, but I did what you said on the fertilizer on the flower for any of the fruit trees we put in October. I added those to the hole before we put them in.
Yeah, so that's great. So one thing too that's nice, you can see down on the graft at the bottom, so you can see the little bit of the black side over here facing me where the original scion had been growing before they grafted in the pink lady onto the rootstock. You want to face that north, which you've got done here with this one at planting. Having that facing north is going to help reduce the likelihood of the graft area getting sunburned. You do want to get back in here. It's buried deep. You want to expose the root flare.
Okay.
You want to see the tops of the roots where they attach to the trunk of the tree, basically like your fingers attach to your knuckles. You want to see them going out into the ground. Tree like this, 8 to 12 inches would be plenty.
Okay.
Maybe even 5 inches if it was like a 5-gallon tree. That's actually going to help reduce the incidence of root diseases, root rot coming in, with Phytophthora, Fusarium, and Verticillium being the main culprits, especially since some of those can take 15 or 20 years to even manifest. And it would actually go back to the tree being buried too deep right now.
Okay.
As for pruning it, so we've just planted it. It's had the original leader cut out to help give us a good open center cut and growth. So you can decide. Now, stone fruits and palm fruits, apples are actually palm fruits or pears. If you do a little bit more pruning, you can get better harvests. You're going to get larger harvests out of the trees, and you can even control the tree at 10 to 15 feet in height instead of letting it grow up to 30 feet, even if it's a full-size tree. So you would decide here, how do I want it going? I actually have a very good scaffolding right in here. I don't even have to have the center if I want. And in part, I'm going to look at it, okay, this is growing into here somewhat. This is growing into over in here. So if I want to keep it lower for easier harvest, I can even still at this point come back in, prune this here. I might not necessarily need this leader here, but I would leave it this here growing up, because once I lose this is all going to be exposed to the sun. Well, having this right here is going to shade the center this first summer. Okay. So that's going to help out with that.
Right.
And then I can decide, do I want to have it shorter and more branching down here at the bottom? So I've got a nice open center cut, which is a great thing to do with your deciduous fruit trees. And then I might come back in here and say, hey, I want to have lower branching, fatter tree, and I'll cut this top here somewhere in this area up in here. I got a lot of good buds to work from, and the direction the bud is facing, prune it just above it, 1/4 of an inch at a slight 45-degree angle. That way I'm leaving a good point of attachment for it. This bud is going to grow out towards me, so I can control the direction the tree's going to grow. So if I use this bud, it's going to grow right back into the center of the tree and give me problems later on. Same with this one over here. So I want something, either this one or this one on this side, or even this one here if I don't want to reduce as much of the height on it this year. And then this is going to be the main branching, develop the good scaffold on this tree. That's going to give me a good 1.5 feet to almost 2 feet between this branching and this branching here. So it's going to be a really good balanced structure on the tree for long-term growth. I'm not as worried about getting fruit out of it this year. I want to develop the shape of the tree, and that's what's going to allow me to happen if I do those types of things.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's on its way out.
Yeah.
We're enjoying the sound.
Yeah, right.
Those weren't from borers. When you see the nice even pattern.
This is an apricot
Yep.
that I did my best to tackle the center because there was a ton of growth that went to the
When you
center.
have trees that were stressed, die back on them for whatever reason, whether it was, you know, lack of nutrients, lack of water, too much water, what have you. As soon as you go in and start pruning them and they start to recover, you're going to like this coming out up in here, unless you have a lot of them that are really close, or something like this that's going to be not even necessarily crossing over, but a poor point of attachment, getting that strong V shape again to where you've got included bark.
Okay.
And let some of these grow back out, but keep assessing the tree constantly, because we can see here we had some splits on it.
Yeah.
So we've got some dead growth up in here, and we don't know why. And so sometimes when it's just starting up in here, I had another client up in the Phoenix Valley location where he'd lost some plum trees to Pseudomonas. It had spread across his property, where there were a couple plum trees here in the back.
Oh, man.
I mean, they had a trunk like this and were 15 feet tall, 18 feet, and just went up and just pushed them over because they had rotted out, and then it spread all across the rest of his property to the other plums over here, bypassing the mangoes and some of the other trees in the center. So this could even be signs. Sometimes people say, well, I've got gummosis. Well, gummosis oftentimes can be a symptom, not necessarily the disease. So if you've got sap bleeding out, so if this starts bleeding later, it could be a sign of that maybe I've got some type of soil fungus going on, of phytophthora, root rot, fusarium, something like that happening, because this is really deep, and you can see where there had been some sap coming out in here. It's black. It's on the inside, so where it had been shaded, so it's not sunburned.
Yeah.
So look at that as well. So we know it's not from sunburn, and it's coming down into here. These are good to see here where I had been talking about we didn't initially have a good cut. So where these cut and broke, and you can see trees don't heal. They just grow around.
Right.
So this is what we call coated, and it's compartmentalization of decay in trees. So sometimes afterwards the trees will start to even rot from inside these areas.
Right.
You can see where it had originally been staked and tied up, and somebody forgot to move the strings, so the tree had grown around it. And there was actually even a branch right here. You can see where that's been cut off at one point as well. So, and again, trees buried deep here, so we're not seeing a root flare, so that can help bring in some of the soil diseases. So you just keep walking around the tree trying to look for other.
Now, do you think on something like this, would it help to just take this one off?
Depends on what the actual cause of it is. So if it was just sunburn or something to that effect, yes, you could just take it off. If it is an actual root disease, symptoms of a root disease, then it may or may not make a difference, because some of those can be treated, some can't. So at that point, you need to almost take a sample, soil sample, if you can, even a root sample. Look for local labs that will test it in that area. Ask them how do they want the sample taken. And those are the top three, is Phytophthora, Fusarium, and Verticillium, and see about having those tested. Very common on citrus in our area to see some of those diseases, unfortunately. A lot of times those can also be brought about by improper watering. Continuous shallow watering instead of long, deep, infrequent watering. So if you look at the university, say if this was an orange tree, they might say it's taking 200 gallons or so of water a week in the summertime. So call it 210 for easy, 7 day. Everybody will say, well, I just need to put 30 gallons of water a day every day through the summer. They don't read at the bottom of the chart where it says you want to put that 200 gallons worth of water on in 1 week's watering. Newly planted the first summer is where it may take smaller watering, smaller length, more frequently, because you're establishing the root ball, versus once you got something like this established, my favorite saying is come out here, turn the water on, go into town, go to the dinner, go to movies, go to the dancing, come home, have a nightcap, then come home and turn the water off. But slowly, don't turn the hose on full blast and
Right.
think you're watering. You want to just walk off and leave it a good long slow deep soak. You said it did have a lot of other dead wood on it that you pruned out last year. So.
Yeah, just a decent, just some dead, and then just a lot that was going to the inside.
And so potentially, so we can see here on this branch going way up in there, we've got some bark that's starting to split and crack and peel more so than on other branches right down in here that we can see. So we might even have to keep an eye out on this branch. And then back in over here on this one that we'd seen the issue, we can see more cracking and splitting now on some of these branches that are going up on this side, especially even this one that's growing back up into the center of the tree. There's some good cracking and splitting going on up in here. Now that you get underneath this one, you can see it going on up in there. So,
Yeah, I wasn't sure if that was normal when it comes to apricot and their type of bark and growth and things like that, or if it was just because the tree was so neglected, not watered properly and things like that. So I thought, well, maybe that's just a product of drying out so much or something.
And it's
And
possible
outgrowth
because
again.
it was 3 years ago, dry year where it didn't even rain.
Right.
So I recall a similar year in the 80s, and at least that year maybe it didn't rain, but we had humidity. We saw cloud buildups.
Mm-hmm.
That year there was nothing. Have some humidity, the trees will be
Yeah, they can kind
a
of
little bit happier.
Yeah.
Fully happy, but they can handle it.
And then right after that, for a couple of years, this property is vacant. So unfortunately, it's been that's why it's been a work in progress,
That's a
getting it
work
back
in
in order.
progress. Well, but that makes it more fun. Then you get to put your touch in a few places
True.
and have fun and say, okay, here was the cornerstone tree of the original homeowner. Now here's my cornerstone tree.
Yeah, that's true.
Over here.
Into the season last year, I left this one, even though it was going on the inside, because it seemed like this great branch to air layer. Well, now it's grown like gangbusters because I've given it Tony's and watered it. And so now I've got it, this one seems like something you take out.
Well, you can pick some of these other smaller branches to air layer in here because now we talked about those other trees having a lot of bark splitting and everything on them.
Right.
Well, this one has a lot of dead growth on the other side. This whole main branch here is dead, so then we're sitting here wondering what's going on. Well, if we look at all of these right here, which we're looking straight southwest,
Right.
now we might come in and say, especially after you mentioned earlier that the property sat vacant for 2 years and it's a plum tree, now we may have had issues where this was actually sunburned many years ago because we're seeing all the damage on all the limbs just right here on the southwest side. So now we can say, aha, it's a good possibility that was the case because the foliage up top looks nice and green and healthy. So maybe we're not having any issues. Now we don't see any fruit, but then again this year it stayed below average temperatures for a later period of time. We had a good amount of cold, one quick warm up, make everything leaf out and flower, and then the cold came again, killed all the flowers on most everything, especially down here in this area. I'm sure you had many nights back down low 20s and stuff.
Yep. We had a number of things that all the flowers died off, or the new young leaves fried.
For an average little homeowner, somebody who gets something like that, you can go out and put up, smudge pots, something to get some heat out there in the garden, or you can go out with industrial fans, put them around, have them on low to medium depending upon the distance, and just keep a small breeze blowing through, and that can help keep the cold air from settling on.
We did cover, for instance, row cover on all of our small baby trees, and we even put lights on, like Christmas lights around, especially the new peach baby trees, and that helped. But so those flowers crisped up, even so, and now there's some new growth, some new flowers.
There you go. So no, don't even water it beforehand, especially bananas, because that's just where you're gonna get bud rot or foot rot, any of those types of soil diseases on those real tropicals.
But any other tree, it'd be good to water before a freeze.
Good to water them beforehand if you've got citrus or something like that, or especially now when they're in blooms. There's only so much you can do for the flowers. There, you're just trying to save the tree itself.
Right, okay.
You know, you'll see them in Florida, they spray water out there on them because it's going to be a prolonged freeze.
Mm-hmm.
The water freezes, that's actually insulation.
Okay.
That's what it protects them. It's like snow. When we just had the snow a few weeks ago here in Arizona.
Right, it's good insulator.
I talked to another gentleman, he had his tomatoes out there, he got caught off guard, wasn't around. Snow came in all around his tomatoes. The portion of the tomatoes that were sticking up out of the ground all froze where the snow had packed in around them. They survived it because the snow acted as an insulator against the freeze afterwards. So it's not always necessarily the snowfall,
yeah,
which is neat to go and play with,
yeah,
because we don't see it that often here in Arizona, but it's the freeze that comes after the snowfall. So
right,
that was great. So the snow is a blanket, so is the ice. Don't be in a rush
right
to knock it off your plants. So this tree here, we're going to look at it and we're going to see, oh wow, nice big beautiful apricot tree. We just bought it, and then all of a sudden we don't have hardly half of it leafing out. So all these branches here are dead. We're going to come in and say, oh wow, there's nothing happening here. We get all dead growth, trace it back in, we've got sap coming out in here into these areas. So this is what, especially on citrus, a lot of people call gummosis. So here's our symptom of the disease that we have going on here in the tree. So again, we don't know exactly what's going on. We do have a few random holes from woodpeckers indicating it's possible that we're borers in here. In the trees we saw earlier, there were just rows of holes, Mr. Lizard up in there, rows of holes from woodpeckers going all the way around. Those are sap suckers. They're just after the sap on the tree. So they can do damage. That's a whole different scenario versus having hole here, hole here, hole here. When they're random like that, then you know it's a woodpecker going after worm in there. Now the worms didn't cause this. They came in secondary. We had this already weakening the tree, so a lot of times insects go after weak, diseased trees from the beginning. We can even see more sap starting to bleed out right up in here. We've got more up in here going on. So again, we know this tree needs to be removed. Even though we know the tree is dead, we're not going to try and treat it because of how much growth is already dead, and seeing the signs right there of the sap bleeding out. It would still be a good idea to go ahead and take soil and root samples, have this tested to know, because some of the diseases there is no treatment for, and they can stay, even the spores can lay dormant in the soil for up to 20 years with some of them. So if you go in and say, okay, hey, I took it out, I waited a year, I replanted here, and 5, 10, 15 years later, all of a sudden you had the same disease because the spores can stay dormant in the soil. So you want to know what you've got here, especially here where flood irrigation, some of those diseases can spread with the flood irrigation water. Granted, we have an apricot here, pecans over here, so some diseases may be species specific, so they may not bother the pecan trees. Right. So we got to look at it and see. Going back to a gentleman in Phoenix Valley who had Pseudomonas that struck his plum trees, didn't bother the elm, didn't bother the mangoes, didn't bother the avocados.
Well, that's good.
But got the plums and then did try to spread to a couple of the peaches. But and Pseudomonas you're not treating for. That's
right. Okay.
It's done.
All right. Unfortunate, but
yeah. And then here again, okay, some people would say, well, let's just cut this branch off so everything's leaking there. We've got sap coming out right here, so it's in the main trunk. So it's always good to do a good overall 360 inspection of the entire tree, up and down. A lot of times, especially looking at what we call the main crotch area. So here's our main crotch where the branching starts from here down, is a lot of times where the symptoms may first manifest with the bleeding of the sap. And we can see a little movement. We know we got, so from the age of this tree, I'm sitting here with one hand.
Oh yeah.
And I am rocking it in the soil. So there can be a good sign that we've got root rot going on down in there, and that's what's causing us to have the sap bleeding up in here. I may have a strong handshake, but for me to do it left-handed, and I'm right-handed, and I can shake this whole tree in the ground, we've got an issue. Unfortunately, most of the flowers have
Well, these, honestly, this has not flowered until just now. This is the first time I'm seeing flowers on it walking over here with you.
So like plum and apricot and stuff, stone fruits, the flowers come along the branch.
Okay.
And so they come along the main stem. Pears and apples are palm fruits. So they have side spurs like this, which is what the flowers come from. So like this little spur right here, you can see flower buds just starting to form on it. So a lot of times people don't realize that with apples and pears. See here again, here's an even better one to try and see. Here's the main stem. If this was a peach or a plum or an apricot or something, the flowers are going to be along the main stem.
Right.
In reality, they're coming from this little side spur right here. You can see that little bit. So a lot of people will go through and they'll trim that off.
Okay.
They've just come through, whack, I pruned it off, even right here. Here's a little side spur. Here's my flowers coming out. So you just got to know that on palm fruits, meaning your apples and pears, that's where my flower buds are. So I see a lot of people, and you know, and they don't know. If I hadn't been doing this for over 40 years, I certainly wouldn't know. But so that's what you want to watch out for. The other thing to know, as you can see with this tree here, pears are very strong and vertical. Plums are strong and vertical, eventually looking more like an inverted pyramid. And apples try to grow somewhere in between with their shape. So this is a tree here if you wanted to be more manageable with it, and it is pretty old. Most of them for an average orchard use might be 15 to 20 years. The tree itself may live 50 plus years, but for heavy production. So again, you don't want to reduce by more than a third at a time. And you can see right here on the right, so if we go up this branch right up the right where it goes way up top, and you can see the final branch going off to the right there, we can see we got about 6 or 10 inches of a butt stem up there, which would show it wasn't pruned properly back then. It was just topped, and we don't want to top it. That's where we would have needed to come down to where the bud was, or that main branching, the branch going to the right, again up about 1/4 of an inch and at a 45-degree angle, coming with the angle of the branch at the point of attachment. But otherwise, overall, the tree isn't that bad. Some older stems up in here, so the tree's old. I mean, we just know that. And is it decline, a gradual decline, or is it,
right, yeah,
you know, is it a steep decline once it starts? Just an air layer, so, you know, some of these down in here might be good. Some of them on that branch over in there might be good. You would cut around here all the way, come up here, cut around all the way, slice it down, and then just peel the bark away. Put your rooting hormone on here, wrap it with some potting soil and some green moss that's wet down, and then you would seal it with like a plastic bag with aluminum foil. You can even take a plastic water bottle, cut the top off, slit it down the side, wrap it around it, tie it off on both ends, and just sit and wait for a few weeks to a couple months, depending upon the type of tree and the weather conditions, and it'll grow roots up in here. Not too deep, it's not going to grow roots because you removed the xylem that you need for rooting. So what they did to avoid that, instead of cutting off the both ends and peeling the bark away, they came in and they would start here at an angle and just cut maybe 1/3 of the way down between these two buds, going right down into the center, lift it up, split it up, put the rooting hormone down in there, and at that case the gel type versus the powder type is going to work much better. Then they rewrapped it, soil, moss, and then they just took a water bottle, slit the water bottle down the side and put it over it, and tied it off and let it go, and you're repurposing your plastic.
So I remember taking your class before on pruning trees over in Phoenix, and I couldn't remember which it was that, you know, gives the fruit off the branch and the ones that are at the end.
A lot of times people, you know, this is the flowering spur, that's one, this one right here, they'll think they need to cut these little spurs off, and then you have no flowers anymore. But this is how palm fruits flowers. Pears and apples, that's where the flowers come from. Peach, plum, nectarines, all the flowers would be from these buds along here, which on these palm fruits, that's strictly foliage coming out. So yeah, unfortunately they had all leafed out. This looks like it was an already dead
Yeah, there
dead
are a
branch.
lot of
So there's some dead growth in here.
wood, yeah, inside these ones. I didn't get to these last year.
Well, no, that's all right. I mean, you get in there, you prune them out. Just realize that a lot of times, pomegranates are just a huge bush.
Yeah.
Over-glorified 15, maybe eventually 20-foot bush,
Right.
depending upon the variety, and 8 to 15 feet across. So you don't have to try and trim them up like a tree. If you prune them up like a tree, you're going to have weak branches and not as much fruit because it's going to bend it over and it's going to take it a while to develop a thick trunk.
Right.
And so then if you do want to have it more of a tree form, find one branch that you're going to grow out with it, but don't prune it up right away. Leave a lot of lower growth because it'll slow down the top growth, but it'll help thicken up the trunk more to hold up better against the winds and the weight of the fruit if you have to. Know that sometimes when you do a lot of heavy pruning on a pomegranate, then initially they may resend up a lot of shoots that are going to want to grow up fast and long and maybe even not flower right away. You can almost see that with that one back there. You can see some of the really narrow shoots, how they've just shot straight up fast. So we had that at our house. I hadn't been able to get to the pomegranates just because of other things going on, and so I'd gone in and given them really hard pruning, and even though they were already 15 feet, they regrew back with some really long shoots that were 10 to 15 feet that year, and they were penciled to almost, pinky thick by the end of the year. And over the winter I went in to prune those out. I'm going to go throw them away, and my wife is like, "Oh no, wait a minute, save those for me." "What do you want these for?" I thought, just maybe kindling when we do the little barbecue, cook some meat out there. She says, "No, those make a great switch. Our son is like this. The only other person to use it on is me. What do you need a switch like this for?" Whatever it is, I'm sorry already. So
That is funny.
anyhow, so if you want it for something like that, no, she liked them because any rugs or stuff at the end of winter, it was go out, hang them, and
Oh yeah.
beat them with the stick, because that's what she had grown up doing where she lived. So unfortunately, these were frozen, all the new growth that came out on them. They should recover.
Yeah, we had that.
It's gonna take
all the little baby leaves.
It's going to take time, and know that if you ever have something like this happen with some of your plants, you may see growth start back out from down low, and a lot of times people rush in, okay, I got growth, it froze to there, it's dead to there, and they cut it back to here. Well, it may still be alive to here, but it may take it another 2 to 5 weeks to show that it's alive up in here.
Mm-hmm.
So don't always be in a rush to run back out there, especially once the nights first start warming, and then sometimes it might get cold again. If you're close to that average last frost date, and remember, average, all that means is that if it's the 15th of the month, half the time your last frost date happens before the 15th, half the time it happens afterwards. And your plants may start regrowing at the first of the month. So you may wait till the end of the month before you're going in there and pruning anything, because if there was dead growth up above, that's insulation for the new growth that's trying to come out down below. So don't be in a rush to always run out and prune things back after they've frozen in the wintertime.
Right.
But the freeze was severe enough, it did internal damage down into here, and suddenly it collapses with the summer heat. So we saw that about 12 years ago with the big freeze in Tucson, that trees recovered, they started growing, all of a sudden it hit triple-digit temperatures, and they started collapsing, other branches dying, or even the whole tree dying. It was just because there was enough internal damage that it took till the summer heat set to show that trees couldn't move enough nutrients, and especially water, up to the top.
Right.
And they still went.
Wow. These ones on this end were always small, had a lot of dead wood, and this one still does. I kind of think I got the dead wood out of this one last year, but I haven't.
Unfortunately, okay, so there's plastic in here somewhere.
Yeah, we've been pulling that out.
Well, and so that creates a problem, is you don't know how much plastic is underneath the soil. So is the water going down and hitting plastic, and then it's not getting all the way down into the roots on some of these larger trees. Young couple came into the nursery some years ago, very nice couple, had bought a house, had a privet hedge if I recall correctly. Anyhow, they kept taking cuttings of it everywhere to all the nurseries. Everybody's telling them more water, they're dumping water on it.
You gotta be kidding me.
They couldn't figure out what was going on, finally gave up, went to rip them out, and there was this much soil on top of cement that went all the way up to the trunk of the plant. So yes, they're putting water there. They were just watering the cement and not.
Oh my goodness, how terrible.
So, and we can see this pomegranate's already restarting to leaf back out. So we've got some growth coming in from down low. These branches were already dead, you can tell from that.
Yeah, those
so
are the ones
that's
that
not an issue. So It was on the inside, so don't worry about it. We've already got growth leafing back out, so it's going to recover. And when they get hit with the freeze, it can be 3 to 8 weeks for them to turn back.
They were so pretty and green, you know, coming in, and I was like, oh, this is great. And then all of a sudden,
yep,
bam.
way down in the and new growth when it comes out, even though these pomegranates may have been hardy down to as low as 10 degrees, that fresh, tender new growth, 35 degrees can be death.
Okay.
On some plants,
I'd
sometimes
imagine.
even 40. So
I figured it had.
it doesn't even have to hit freezing for it.
I figured it had something to do with.
But yeah, we've already got good new growth coming back out. So these larger, older ones established, they're going to recover.
Yeah. Okay.
It may mean not much fruit this year, but they're going to recover just fine. And so we even have swallowtail butterflies acting as pollinators. So that's what everybody forgets. Honeybees aren't the only pollinator around. I don't know.
Yeah.
So might need the fruit to set on it again. There's yellow pippins were fairly common way back then. Different pie ones. I mean, there's another one that begins with an E that people have planted out here, the Einschmier. Or
Yeah,
Einsheimer,
that's the one it
people
seemed
know.
like when I looked it up.
Looking at the size of it, unless the prior homeowner had ordered it online,
Oh, no.
I don't know that there were a lot of them being sold.
I see.
I mean, granted, this isn't Tucson, but
Same type
you know,
difference.
Tucson area was where most people came to get a lot of their fruit trees if they didn't order them online. And another reason I don't believe it was Einschmier, those tend to flower a little bit earlier in the season.
Oh, okay.
Like Anna apples. I have a picture of my Anna apple tree at home from about 4 years ago, in bloom, flower on it, and the honeybee frozen to death in the snow on it. So what she was doing out trying to pollinate the apple bloom when it was snowing all day,
No way.
I have
Wow.
no idea, but she's frozen dead in the
Aw.
snow-covered apple blossom.
Poor
So, and that was when I think it snowed February. It was mid-late February with that one.
thing. Right?
So,
Wow. Besides like little branches that are kind of getting funky.
I mean, I might try and reduce the height of it, but see again.
Right, there's where I was looking.
It's already going, so, because you can see some of it up in here, and the black is what always concerns me when I see black on the stem. So now, like, all these woodpecker holes here, again, this is sapsucker. So when you've got them all close like this is sapsucker. But this is where I would start taking a shoot like this and start air laying
Okay.
and see.
Is
And
this
just,
a good little, I mean, whatever it is, it's good. They're small, but I didn't thin it. So I think this year I was going to thin it and see how much bigger we can get the fruit. Man, they look good. Good.
yeah, you gotta, number one, you do need to thin some of them,
Yeah.
especially when they're younger. But, you know, so yeah, again, it's reducing it by a third. So I would do that just to get in there to be able to easier pick it.
Now to not top it, but to keep it down, is there a way of doing that? Is there a way?
Well, so that's where when you do it, you come in and you cut above another branch. Topping it means I just come in and whack it at some point. Just cut it wherever. So doing that is where I'm going to come in and I'm going to come just above another branch. So like if I was cutting this one out, I would cut just above this here. So what I would do is, you've got not this crotch right here, but the crotch farther up there, another, what's that, almost 3 feet up. So I would cut it down there. So I would just reduce the overall height by a third, but cut it at where you already have another good lateral branch. That's just reducing the height, reducing the canopy.
Okay, good.
You know, and then you can take out
So
some
that's
stuff
the
in
way to do it.
in the middle, like this one up here that this is hanging on right above up
Right.
in here, and
Okay,
you can do a few little ones like that.
like in the middle there, yeah.
You know, and this would be something normally I might remove, but then this branch would be great for air layer.
Yeah, I'll probably try to airlay that one. Couple
So that
of-
one,
this is
there's
a good
one.
little apple.
There's one more here on the other side that's shooting straight up.
Yeah,
This would be a good one. This one right here that I'm leaving, that would be a great one to air layer.
okay. Cool. All right.
For a cut, you know, you've got the 3 here, the top had been cut out. Again, I might go and cut it here. Some will even take it down to here.
Okay.
You know, have a lower fatter branching
I see.
structure, and then you've got these 3 here would be your main branching coming out.
Right. Okay.
Pull the chicken wire back a little bit so that these have a little room to grow, and they don't use it as like a crutch or something, get reliant on it, or push them back into the center.
Okay.
Yeah, unfortunately the deer are an issue out here.
I know.
But the deer still easily come in and just top on it prune the top back for you easily.
I know, exactly.
Salad time. On trees yourself. I mean, grafting can be fun, and again, I'm not always the best because I cut in too deep, but pecans don't come true from seed, meaning you plant a pecan seed, you've got a new pecan variety. But you can plant a pecan seed, let it grow up, and then take buds from these other trees, graft them onto that one, and then now you have new trees. And if you direct seed it into the ground, you're going to have the strongest rootstock versus buying a new tree and trying to put it in there, because pecans have tap roots. When you buy them from the store, those tap roots have been cut. They don't necessarily redevelop.
Right.
So.
And you can't really air layer something with a taproot, right?
Well, no, you could still air layer these trees and have a new tree, but sometimes they'll, that's the whole reason of grafting a lot of trees onto different rootstocks, is either for disease resistance, to grow maybe in heavier clay type soils, and ease of production, and guaranteed of getting the same thing. So if you air layer it, sure, air layer it, stick it in the ground, you're not going to get a taproot from it because it grew from up top, but that's going to get you something that's up and producing a little bit quicker. And
so I could try to go. When we moved in only a year ago, was at least half the size that it is now. So it took off, shot up. I took off some of the, as you can see. But do you see that wiggle? Is that okay?
Yeah. Well, there's nothing you can do about it.
I know. Is there anything else I should do to this, you think, at this point? Okay.
I would leave it. Again, I'm more of trying to leave as much lower branching when I do a lot of orchard trees, just for ease of harvest. If I'm trying to do them myself, but no, that's it.
Okay.
If you look at them like this up here, here's the whole ring right here, the collar. So if you were to cut even flusher with the tree, that's a larger wound for the tree to heal over. So if you cut it close right there, it's less of a wound to heal over. You don't have to remove the whole collar, just get it in close and you're good to go. Okay. And then, some of these here, like this right up here, are forked. Right here you can see the shoot going up to the top, and you've got that third little one that's starting to go off to the side.
Get rid of that.
Get rid of the one that's maybe going up to the top even, because that's where your V split is and long-term potential included bark. Starting to press against each other right here.
Right.
So this is literally almost like a fault line waiting for the earthquake to happen. A situation like this, for the health of trees and everything, ideally you don't want to reduce it by more than 30% at any given one time. It's a real hazard or something else is about to happen. In this situation, you can look at it and say, okay, because we already have this major split up here, we're going to lose this main trunk here. And so we may come in and reduce its height of cut this year, take off a couple of these side branches. So the one going up and over to the left, and then this one out to the right that's looking like it's would be the first one to reduce the top height. So again, we're not in a rush to remove this. If we just slowly reduce the height of the cut by about a third, don't remove more than a third of the overall tree, and leave like this branch here that's lower down for this year, and leave that one up above up there, we're going to at least still keep a little shade on this trunk on this side of the tree for this year, some amount, so that we don't get any potential sunburn right away.
Okay. That makes sense.
You go to remove a branch, especially something this size, but even smaller, like the size of my arm here, if, okay, I want to take this whole thing off. If I just come in and start to cut here, the weight of this branch is going to, as I'm cutting here, it's just going to pull it and start to fall, and it's going to rip and tear and just leave a whole big open wound here. Trees don't heal over, they grow over damage. So what we would do is we would come in up into here, and we would cut in up to a third on the bottom up. Then maybe go up another foot, cut in up to about a third again on the top, then come down here, start and make our cut, so that as it breaks and splits, we've got our break and tear up here, farther up, and then we can finish cutting and make a nice smooth clean cut finish here without having it ripping and tearing down here. So that's the best way to do any branch. So easier to show here. We want to cut here, so we'll come in about here, cut a third of the way up, come up here, cut about a third of the way up, so our break and tear is right here, and then we have a smaller piece to finish cutting, which we should be able to safely do without having it rip and tear bark all the way down the side of the tree. Everybody always questions me when I tell them, like a little 10-foot garden, to use 4 cups of this, 1.5 to 2 cups of this. It's because this can take 3 to 4.5 cups for a pound, and this 1.5 cups to maybe 2 cups is a pound. So
I see.
Always follow the label directions of what you're using. They have it figured out by weight, not by volume. Old days, the fertilizers would say put X number of pounds per tree per area. Nobody ever knew how many cups that was, so now they put it by cups. So do what they say, read the label well.
Well, I really want to thank you for coming out.
Well,
Tony.
thanks
Thank
for
you so
having
much
me.
for
This
coming
was
out and
great.
giving us so much information. It's amazing. What's your website so we can tell the folks, and I'll put it in the show notes too.
So the website for the fertilizer is earthsoriginalorganics.com. YouTube is Earth's Original Organics. Instagram is Tony's Magic Mix. And Facebook is Earth's Original Organics. So I guess that gives us coverage on most of them.
Nice, yeah, and you can get your product on your website, obviously, right? And you ship?
Yeah, you can order directly off of the website. The price is on the website. Okay. That's what they are. There's no extra shipping fee. It's got where you can buy it locally here in Arizona. We're working at expanding out to different locales.
Nice.
You can even go to the website. It lists many of the benefits of the individual ingredients of the fertilizers. There are a few testimonials on there. If you go to the contacts, that will send an email to me, which I will see. I am on the road a lot.
Yeah.
So much so that
we're so lucky to get him out here today.
Yeah, I mean,
you're a busy man.
No, last year I literally walked into the hotel in Phoenix last year, and the lady behind the counter said, "Welcome home." I got home 10 days later, walked in the house, my wife looked at me and she said, "Welcome, stranger, we love having guests in the house." The same,
oh my gosh.
Same trip. So yeah,
we are
it was
so blessed to have you.
Well, I loved it. I mean,
Thank
you for the tour of the farm. This is beautiful.
And it's great to see that, you know, you have so much knowledge now. I know what tree to cut down, and then kind of more about how much tea I should be using on the bigger trees. I know obviously I could be putting in the dry stuff too, and eventually we'll get there.
Yeah, well, no, and it's going, but I mean, you know, trees like this, maybe you're going to put, you know, 20 to 50 gallons of fertilizer at a shot, and then finish of the tea, and then finish watering it in.
Okay.
So it's not like, oh, the tree needs 200 gallons that you need. You're going to put all 200 gallons of water of it as fertilizer tea. That still gets a little expensive. So, you know, this here might do 3 to 5 trees.
Right, perfect. Yeah, I've been moving it around and redoing it.
If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me via Instagram at Tony's Magic Mix, the website earthsoriginalorganics.com. If you click contact us, that email will go straight to me. YouTube, Earth's Original Organics, or Facebook, Earth's Original Organics as well. Thank you for watching in. Have a blessed day, everyone. Video of a rare fruit growers of Tucson and southern Arizona. Tonight's class is going to be on growing avocados in the in southern Arizona. So we'll do that, and so then you can go to YouTube channel for Earth's Original Organics, and I'm going to try and repost them up there. Be patient. I'm learning how to do the computer stuff. I know plants, not computers.
Bye. You take care. Thanks a lot. All right.